Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Flyers Files podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Durso. Thanks for joining me once again for another week of Flyers Talk here on BFA Live Sports. We got a lot to get to, some injury news regarding the Flyers that is certainly unfortunate, some other successful things to discuss as well. Before we get into all of that, a reminder of where you can find me and find all of the shows that are part of the BFA Live Sports platform. I am on social media at Kevin_Durso. That is on the Twitter X platform. That is on Instagram, TikTok, all of the above. Go and watch everything and read everything. You can read my stories on 97.3ESPN.com as I cover the Flyers day in, day out, game after game, as we go through this 82-game journey together. And it's now come to a point where now, for a lot of this season, things have gone really well for the Flyers. A lot of successes, a lot of things that maybe were unexpected. And there kind of always is a feeling of when things are going well that something's going to happen. And it appears that has happened for the Flyers as we get into today's show and start discussing everything that is kind of going to set the stage for the week to come and the weeks to come, honestly, and kind of put a bookend on the month of November, because this is the first game of December that the Flyers play. Not a very good one that features a piece of news that nobody wants to hear. No team wants to have a player like this be out for long term, but that's what's going to happen to the Flyers in this case. So we'll start with the week in review, and it was a really good week for the Flyers since the last episode. The Flyers played that night and last Wednesday and picked up a 4-2 win over the Florida Panthers. Final minute goal by Tyson Foerster. Sean Couturier added one as well, and the Flyers come back from a 2-0 deficit and get a win against the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Statement victory for sure. The Flyers play on Black Friday on the road this time. First time in a long time that they've played on Black Friday on the road. And they jump out to a 3-0 lead early in the second. By the end of the second period, the lead is gone. It's a 3-3 game. They kind of weather the storm through the third period into overtime and get the game to a shootout where they've been specialists. We will get into that later in the show, but they get a 4-3 win in the shootout over the New York Islanders. The next night, they play against New Jersey, and they cap off this road trip, this 4-game road trip, which started, by the way, with one of their worst games of the season against Tampa Bay. Just nothing really generated a 3-0 shutout loss. And cap it off with a third straight win, beating the Devils 5-3. They jumped out to a 4-1 lead in that game. So things really looking up for the Flyers at that point, and then they come home for the first game of a 6-game homestand and just lay an egg. 5-1 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins, a game that really just didn't feature any juice, didn't feature any energy, and that's a little surprising when you consider the two teams that you're talking about in that game and what has been the Flyers' style all season long. So certainly certain elements of that game that you want to forget quickly as the Flyers move on to the next week of action. But we're going to start with the big news that comes out of that game on Monday, and it kind of bookends the week in review, because the first game from the week in review involved a game-winning goal from Tyson Foerster. And Foerster scored the only goal of the game against Pittsburgh as well for the Flyers, but followed it up pretty quickly after by injuring himself on a shot attempt, non-contact. His right shoulder just appeared to be in a lot of pain. It is just regarded as an upper body injury. But on Tuesday, the Flyers announcing that he will be out for 2 to 3 months. Significant injury for Tyson Foerster, who is the team's leading goal scorer at the time, 10 goals on the season. And now you have to find a way to fill the void. Here's how it's going to start for the Flyers, because they've already made their first roster move regarding this, and here's how it's going to start. They've called up Carl Grundstrom from Lehigh Valley. Grundstrom is not going to directly replace Foerster. He's going to go probably into a prototypical fourth line role, see if he can provide a little spark offensively for them. He's had some success in the AHL. Nikita Grabenkin, who we talked about recently as a player that they needed to find minutes for. Well, now here's your opportunity. Not the way you want to have it happen, but here's your opportunity. So Grabenkin's going to get the first chance to kind of fulfill some of the minutes that Foerster was getting. Will that work? That's what the Flyers are going to try to find out over the next handful of games. It does not have to be something that lasts terribly long if it doesn't work. There was a lot of talk about maybe this is the time to give Alex Bump a shot. Maybe Denver Barkey was going to get the call because he's taken to the AHL very well. I'm going to tell you right now on Denver Barkey, get that out of your mind, because if Alex Bump is not quite ready yet, there's no way Barkey's ready as a pro. But there are good things that Barkey is doing that you have hope that he could be one of these types of guys in the future. But Bump has this kind of he had the expectations going into camp that he could be an NHLer, and now he's starting to deliver the numbers in the minor leagues that tell you he's getting closer to that spot. And if he continues to do what he's doing and focuses on his game, they may not have a choice but to give him a call up if everything else is just not working. So we'll see where exactly this goes. But how do you also replace a player in your lineup like Tyson Foerster, who has, to this point, been among your best players? And here's the reason why. It's not just the 10 goals that lead the team. Tyson Foerster is a player that does so many things well in the game that taking him out of the picture is kind of a scary thought. You know, Foerster plays all situations. He can be on your power play, he can be on your penalty kill. He's obviously at 5-on-5. He, as a winger, really gets in on the forecheck well, really knows how to use his body well, uses him, gets good positioning, all of that. So he knows how to do all of that. He's strong on the puck. He's able to take it away from people. He's got a great shot that helps him to score the goals that he has. And he's on a scoring pace. If you go back to last season, he's on a scoring pace that's really eye-opening. I believe it was he had 19 goals in his last 30 games last season. And now he's got 10 in his first 21 this season. So over a 51-game span, he scored 29 goals. That is the kind of goal scoring that you long for, and he's giving it to you. And now you're not going to have, not only are you not going to have him in your lineup for, like, let's say, short term might have been not for the rest of the homestand, think middle of the month. Midterm might have been think the entire month, but you get a couple of nice breaks in here where you don't play for several days in a row. Maybe when you come back from the holidays, that would be an option. No, this is straight up 2 to 3 months, where 2 months from now is into the early part of February, where the Flyers play 2 games and then go to the Olympic break and don't come back until February 25th, when you are now bordering on the 3-month mark. So this pretty much is going to probably take him until post-Olympics to return to the lineup. So that's a lot of time missed. It's a lot of games the Flyers are going to play to try to maintain what they've started this season. And again, it's hard to fill the void of a player like this when you look at everything Tyson Foerster's been able to do, and not just, by the numbers, because you can see so far this season, only 3 assists. He's not as much of a passer. He doesn't have to be, for the most part. He's been the one finishing a lot more. And you think about different things with the past week, getting the game-winning goal in the final minute on Wednesday, scoring the first goal off a turnover on Friday. So many different spots where Foerster has come through and been such a key player, and now he's out of your lineup for the long term. So now you have to figure out where you're going to find that scoring. You've had some balanced scoring throughout your lineup so far this season, but where are you going to find that now that one of your top guys is out? Who's going to step up and fill in there? Who's going to be the next man up, as they talk about? And, at this point, Trevor Zegras is at the top of the list. Matvei Michkov's near it. Owen Tippett's near it. It's going to be time, though, to start seeing Travis Konechny's name pop up a little bit more, to start seeing maybe a little bit more from Bobby Brink, a little more from Sean Couturier, a little bit more from everybody else is going to have to start to step up. Noah Cates I don't think has scored a goal in a little while. Time to start seeing some goals coming from other sources. Christian Dvorak can step up. Guys on the fourth line, you need to start maybe getting some offense from them. You're going to have to fill the void somehow. And it's a hard one to fill when it's a guy who's been one of your better players for a long period of time. So trying to figure out where that offense comes from, how you can manufacture more offense, how you can gain more possession. Because Foerster was not just good at finishing on opportunities and getting, gets to 10 goals pretty early in the season, but also would help you with the possession aspect of the game, making, so you have the puck to be able to score. Maybe it's not him scoring the goal. Maybe it's not him even factoring into the goal on the score sheet, but he might have something to do with either their positioning or the ability to go get the puck and start a play, to continue a play, whatever it may be. You have to factor all of those things in, and I don't know that they're going to be able to solve all of that with one player. It's going to take a balanced effort to figure out what you do to replace, if there's even such a thing, replace a Tyson Foerster in your lineup. So a lot to consider with the Flyers going forward. That's definitely the negative. The positive, short of Monday's game losing 5-1, was all of the wins that they had on the road trip. A successful road trip in terms of getting 3 straight wins. When Thanksgiving weekend, as we'll put it, I guess, rolled around, the Flyers were sitting in, for a time anyway, sitting in 3rd place in the Metropolitan Division. Now they've kind of bounced around the wild card spots, but they're still holding a playoff spot as we move to December. And that's kind of a marker for people that if you're here at this time of year, you're going to be here for the long haul. It's tough year to predict that because of how the standings look, because there are so many different teams that are close together, and 1 3-game losing streak could take you right out of it. A 3-game winning streak could put you in comfortably. It all depends. But the Flyers have done certain things right now that are worth believing in. Overall, record-wise, they've won plenty more games than they've lost to this point, especially when you line up against other teams, and their point total is right there to be among the best in the division and the conference. What don't they have? Consistency at times, not the most entertaining way of playing, so it's sometimes goalie reliant, or you get fortunate with your shooting percentages, whatever it may be. And they don't really win in regulation. Now they've changed that a little bit. You get a clutch regulation win against Florida, and you do it again against the Devils over the weekend and take 2 of the 3 games that you win on the road trip in regulation. That will help, but it still needs to be done with more regularity. You have an opportunity going forward where, and Pittsburgh was part of that with this schedule, but you're going to play Buffalo, who you should beat. They're behind you in the standings. They have their own world of problems. You should be able to find a way to beat the Buffalo Sabres. They're going to play teams like, Seattle, Chicago, San Jose, teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, that are on the rise, that are in about the same position as the Flyers standings wise. So you have this ability to kind of see how you stack up against equals. And then you're going to play tough teams as well. Carolina, Vegas, Colorado. They're all going to factor in too. And as you get ready to go through this kind of run of games, and it's going to be, I believe it's 14 more for the rest of the month. It's a lot, especially when you consider how many breaks you have. That you have 3, they're going to play Wednesday and have 3 days off and then not play until Sunday. And then they're going to get the holiday break where nobody in the league plays for 3 days. And then they don't even have to deal with it on the first day back as they get ready to head west for the West Coast trip. So you have all of those things that factor in, and they're still holding firm in that position. Sometimes we watch early season success or things that go well early in a season, and sometimes, we say it's early. We say it's a small sample size. As this continues to pick up, and the Flyers are now 25 games into the season and still holding one of these spots, as you get to 30, 35, then you're looking ahead to 41, because that's going to be the halfway point, 45, 50. As it continues to pile up, and you're still there, you make more of a believer out of everybody around you. So it may not be the most believable thing that they have, that they're a playoff team. You don't know that yet. I'm not saying that they're going to be or not going to be. I'm not saying that they have the talent or don't have the talent. The league standings are telling you this team has a way of playing that has worked so far. And if they can continue to maintain that and try to stay where they are, stay the course, kind of keep exceeding expectations, they're going to be very similar to 2 seasons ago. You could be in a really exciting place when post-Olympics rolls around and you got to get back at it, and you might still be in the race and alive and well. So as a long way to go, but certainly positives on what the Flyers have done so far to this point, and just where they may be going, because there's elements of this that are unorthodox, right? They didn't necessarily tear it all the way down. They kind of aren't running around this season for where they are in the standings. They're not San Jose or Chicago that can say, we got one of the top lotto picks. Look at us with, San Jose with Macklin Celebrini. Look at us in Chicago with Connor Bedard. Look at those situations where we've got somebody who's going to be a league superstar, and, that's just the way that it is. So there's a way to still get through that, and try to maintain that. It's going to be hard. You just lost one of your best players so far this season, at least one of the ones who plays more consistently than others. And now you're going to have to get the goal scoring from elsewhere. And you're going to have to keep in mind as you go through the process that right? That there is a process to it, that there's a long way to go, and a lot of things can happen that can determine where your season ends up. So you want to be careful of that, especially at this time of the season as you start to get into, this year, maybe even more in particular, because as you go through December and it's got a lot of games on the schedule and a lot of things happening, and it has everything to do with the fact that this Olympic break is really going to throw a jam into the schedule. So what do you do about that? How do you navigate this busy schedule? Try to avoid the fatigue, try to avoid the mind games that being tired can bring. What do you do about it? That is the Flyers' challenge. We'll see if they, even as a very young team, we'll see if they have what it takes to respond to that call. So that's where things stand with the Flyers for now. Some success, certainly a position that they want to be in when it comes to trying to make a playoff push. If that's the ultimate goal for this season, is to be competitive and make a push for the playoffs, maybe get in. That's great. But for now, not quite, just not quite in that ranking system yet that would say, oh yeah, he's going to, they're going to, as a team, be there the whole year. This, consistency with, can they keep getting this from certain players? Can Dan Vladar keep being the way he's been? Can Trevor Zegras keep being the way he's been? Can you get more out of Michkov, or more out of Konechny, or more out of Sean Couturier, or anybody else, more out of your defensemen that allow you to still win games the way you've been winning games? You've been winning games behind great goaltending. You've been winning games behind solid defense, and you've been winning games behind an offense that, when it puts up a decent number of points based on your own kind of ranking system, that is, I'm talking about your own ranking system, finding people who can play in those situations, trying to figure out where everything goes, and stay the course with where you are in the standings while doing it. It's a lot to, and all those games that they have to play and things like that. So as the schedule starts to move through December, as you go through this 6-game homestand, this is another important part of this, by the way, not just the part where they've been, successful. They're in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving. That's a big milestone for sure. To start December with a 6-game homestand, to start on home ice, to not have to go anywhere for 2 weeks and travel after having that 1 week of travel. You were lagging the first game, no question about it, and you shouldn't have been. But now you have a chance to, one, come out on Wednesday and right the wrong and win a game that you feel you absolutely should win and that you may have a little more control over. Then you go to, tough matchup Sunday, because Colorado's been just on another level so far this season. And then as you go through some of the other seasons that are going on and what you may do about how everybody plays, or where everybody plays, and what you're going to do, any changes you're going to make or anything like that, as you go through that, you have a lot of time to, and it's interesting because Rick Tocchet gave the team Tuesday off this week to kind of refresh, I guess, a little more, but there's going to be plenty of opportunities for practice, which you don't get that often in regular season. So again, something that's worth kind of keeping an eye on how they utilize the team in practice, how hard they push, how much it has an effect on the game going forward. The games going forward, will they play with a bit of a different style than we're used to seeing? That's all things we have to find out as this moves along, and as they start to try to carve out a path for being a playoff team in 2025-26. It does not mean it's going to happen for sure. They've got a long way to go to solidify a place in the playoffs. But for now, they're holding one of those spots, and that's a lot more than you can ask for, especially when you consider what the team's expectations were at the start of the season. So for our next topic, I want to bring up something that we just talked about a little bit with the success of the team at Thanksgiving. And as much as they need more regulation wins to kind of put them on the map a little bit more, to separate them from the pack, all the above, they have won a lot of games via the shootout. They've got 5 wins via the shootout. They just won the Black Friday game against the New York Islanders via shootout as well. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because this used to be the thing that nobody wanted to see. If you said the word shootout, it was automatic loss. And now the Flyers seem to be really good at them, among the best in the league at them. Now, it helps when you can add a player to your roster who is really not just really good at shootouts, historically good at shootouts. And we'll get to him in a minute. But now all of a sudden, the Flyers are going into a stretch where after basically almost 20 years or 19 seasons of this, that the Flyers had 160 games go to a shootout leading up to the 2024 or leading into the 2024-25 season. So after this was implemented in 2005, 2006, and all the way up until 2024-25, the Flyers played in 160 shootouts and went 60-100 for a .375 winning percentage, which was last in the league. The last 2 seasons, the Flyers have gone to more shootouts than any other team in the NHL at 14, and they have an 11-3 record in those games, including 5-0 this season, which is just remarkable for the team that doesn't seem to ever have success in this skills competition. And there are 2 primary reasons for why you're having more success now than you were in the past. That would be Trevor Zegras and your goaltending. So let's start with Zegras, because this guy is a shootout cheat code. He has a move for everything. He's kind of changed it up slightly on almost all of his goals. He's gone 5-hole a couple times. He's gone top shelf a couple times on a backhand, and just made it look easy. You now have people who are out there, national media people, who are starting to kind of bring the conversation up that would Team USA consider Trevor Zegras for the Olympic roster just in case of a TJ Oshie situation where you can use the same guy in a shootout round after round until a winner is declared? And if so, why wouldn't it be Zegras? And it makes sense to think that. I don't know if that's going to change anything, but there's a lot more national media talking about it, which means it's probably at least a consideration. To get an idea of how well Trevor Zegras has done at the shootout, 17 goals on 25 shootout attempts in his career. It's a 68% success rate. It's the best among league leaders, but there's also some really good bests that are getting ready to be relit. So, and so let's start running down the list of these other players that, in whether in their heyday, whether it could be current players, technically, could be guys who were doing this 20 years ago when it was new to the league, the shootout, that you would put Trevor Zegras' totals next to these guys and just be amazed by the numbers. Zegras, again, 17 for 25 in the shootout, a 68% success rate. Let's start at the very top. Nobody has more shootout attempts in NHL history than Patrick Kane, 133. His success rate is 39.8%. Alex Ovechkin, 127 shootout attempts. Success rate, 29.1%. TJ Oshie, Now this might be one of the best examples because Oshie is widely known for being exactly the reason why we're even talking about the Olympics with Zegras. The idea that you would have a guy who can play the game in general, but also can just be put out there to take over a shootout because it's near automatic. Oshie only had even a 47.1 success percentage in his shootout attempts. Pavel Datsyuk, again, Datsyuk was the master of making a move when it came to going in on goal in a shootout. 40.8% success rate. UC Jokinen had a stretch where nobody could stop him. Kind of like the way Zegras is now. It was virtually unstoppable. He would go and do the same move just about every time, and every time he did it, the goalie would look stupid because they still somehow, you could know what's coming and still not be prepared for how he was going to deliver that attempt. Even Jokinen only had a 38.5 success percentage on shootout attempts. And when you start to get into the numbers of some of these guys and how many attempts they've had, sure, Zegras having 25 attempts is a small number compared to some of these others in the group. But this is about as close to automatic as you're going to find for a player when it comes to the shootout. And he's making it look easy every single time. To be honest, he almost shouldn't even have one of his shootout goals this year because he got a penalty shot in overtime against St. Louis first. And you wonder how that didn't turn out to be successful because he's tried to do close to the same thing or some variation of it every single time. And it's worked every single time. So he's been incredible. But you also have to get the saves at the other end. You don't just win the game because one shooter that you have has been really good. And it's really interesting to watch, to kind of look at the breakdown of the shootout between the two goalies, because for all of the struggles that Sam Ersson has had throughout the course of the season, he doesn't have a win in overtime or in regulation this season. His 4 wins on the season in goal have all come in the shootout. And he's done well for himself. And actually, here's the interesting thing. So first of all, as mentioned, he's got 4 of the 5 shootout wins this season. All 4 of Ersson's wins this season have come via the shootout. So, and over the last 3 seasons, Ersson leads the league in shootout wins with 12. His save percentage over the course of that time frame is .792, which is 6th among goalies who have at least 5 shootout appearances. Now, this is not to slight Dan Vladar, who had to come in and win a game via the shootout as well when they didn't have Sam Ersson to be able to take over. And as a result of, so they've won games that way, or they've won a game with Vladar in goal in a shootout, and that may be needed again in the future. You never know as things go on and you start to see more of what's happening with the rest of the season. But this is a big reason why the standings look the way they do. You're winning games in shootouts. You are gaining those extra points as a result. It really is kind of, I wrote it in my weekly Flyers Files observation column on 97.3ESPN.com, and it's a sentence that just didn't seem possible not that long ago. That they are where they are in the standings because they win in shootouts. Would have never said anything like that over the last 10 years plus. And now it seems like they have become one of those teams that, like even the game against the Islanders on Black Friday that they did win in the shootout eventually, you could see parts of that overtime where it felt like somebody out there is content to say, let's just get this to overtime or get this to the shootout because we're better there than we are right here. And that's interesting. So something to keep in mind as things start to progress through the rest of the season, and whether or not the Flyers can continue to sustain 2 things with this. One, getting games to shootouts and having to rely on the non-regulation win in the standings. But also, does the shootout success stay? Is there a point where Zegras goes cold and therefore you have to you find other ways to win if you're going to maintain your standings position, because shootout might do it if he's not having a run of success. Maybe it's something else completely, that you don't need that and you don't need the shootout. Maybe you do need the shootout. It all depends. So certainly a unique twist to the Flyers season that kind of seems unexpected. The shootout is their friend this season, and that's not something that you would have believed we would be saying not that long ago. So with that, it's time to get into the Flyers 3 stars of the week. Here we go. And we'll start with the third star of the week. It's Dan Vladar. Now, Vladar's numbers in this are a little inflated. The game against Pittsburgh didn't help, obviously. He gave up 5 goals, took the loss. But big reason why the Flyers got the 2 other wins that they did when he got a start Wednesday and Saturday. He was outstanding, particularly Saturday. And I know he gave up 3 goals against the Devils, but he had an outstanding game and had played really well, kept the Flyers in a game that they hadn't really found as much success yet. They scored the first goal. The game was tied. It's getting down the stretch of the first period. You're going to need, you need the second period to come to start turning it around for you and to really jump out to the lead that you end up holding. That was kind of a commanding lead for the rest of the game, or it felt like a commanding lead for at least a portion of the game. Vladar was a big reason why it ever even got there. And Vladar's a big reason why you hung around 2-2 with the Florida Panthers until you could score a pair of goals in the final minute to claim a win. So he didn't have it Monday. It happens. His week was still outstanding nonetheless. Star number 2 for the Flyers, Trevor Zegras. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. Also had that goal in the shootout as well against the Islanders. He had another great week, and he continues to kind of pace the point production and what happens on the offensive side of things, and giving you that creative element that can be desperately needed at times. The Flyers kind of still need to figure out how to utilize that better, because they don't always get the puck in the right get the puck to go where it should go in the right situation, or maybe they try to make an extra pass and it gets mishandled, or something happens on the play that doesn't work out. So you're not able to see it for what it is and get more offense sometimes. But you do need to have, players like this who keep pace on being one of those level players. Sometimes things work for teams that don't have, maybe by point total, a pure superstar, but you'd like to have certainly at least one of those guys. Most teams would prefer to have 2, 3, maybe even 4 of those guys that they can kind of lean on and say, these are the guys I'm putting on the ice when things matter most. Zegras has still been that level player for the Flyers, though. Like, you want him out there on power plays. You want him out there at the end of a game with a chance to get your team back to within a goal, maybe tie the game, something of that sort. You want him out there in overtime so that you can take your chance on maybe winning a game that way. So all of that for Zegras makes a huge difference, and he continues to kind of deliver to be that pace setter for the Flyers among team leaders that he has. Still has that top spot in points and has really kept it up with being, roughly a point per game guy. And that's impressive for where they are and kind of in the development process and what they wanted to do. And star number 1, and it's a player who we've talked about plenty over the last several weeks. Matvei Michkov got 3 goals this week, 4 points. The scoring touch feels like it might be starting to come, which is a good thing, especially when you consider the Foerster injury. So a lot of different elements here that are starting to bring Michkov more into the spotlight, bring him more into the picture of a guy with numbers on the season that we expect to see, and just the types of performances that you expect to see. He's going to still need to be more consistent. He has to still kind of figure out where he wants to go with his development a little bit. He's definitely listening to things the Flyers coaches are saying, don't get me wrong, but you wonder if there's anything else that they're looking for before he's kind of really let free for, the offensive side of the game. It feels like that's starting to come around a little bit more, as maybe some of the things that, have been discussed with him about defending first or the back checking or anything like that. Maybe it's as it starts to get through his head, he's able to be more successful defensively. So we'll see what happens. But Michkov had a great week for sure. We'll see where this goes from here, but he's got something to build on. That's Matvei Michkov, your first star of the week. And with that, we're going to shift our attention to what's coming up. Here is the look ahead and the games upcoming on the schedule. Just 3 of them before our next show. Wednesday night at 7:30, the Flyers take on the Buffalo Sabres to continue a 6-game homestand. That homestand also has visits from the Colorado Avalanche on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock and the San Jose Sharks on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So that is your immediate upcoming schedule. Winnable game against Buffalo with everything that they've gone through and where their season is at. Colorado's been outstanding, only 1 regulation loss so far on the season in upwards of 25 games. That's going to be a problem. And then the obvious with just kind of trying to navigate the road ahead now with what does this team look like without Tyson Foerster in the long term? Who kind of fills the void in multiple ways, mind you, because you have to fill the minutes, obviously, but you can be filling minutes with relatively neutral hockey. Can you get a guy who helps produce a little bit? Maybe not to the rate that Foerster does, but can you get a guy who can do some of those things so that maybe you don't feel the loss as devastatingly as it appears it could be? So that's going to just about do it for this week's episode of Flyers Files. Once again, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in and thank everybody for following along during this Flyer season with me. First things first, let's tell you about our next show. There's a little bit of a change coming up with the next show. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. The next show for Flyers Files will still be next Wednesday, December 10th, but it will be at a different time. We'll go live at 7:30 p.m. And discuss more about what's going on in Flyers hockey. There will have been a game the night before, and that'll kind of lead us perfectly into the next stretch of conversation. So once again, follow along with me throughout the course of the week as the Flyers take on the Buffalo Sabres, Colorado Avalanche, San Jose Sharks before we meet again. Follow my work on 973ESPN.com. You can also follow me on Twitter X at Kevin_Durso. Also at Kevin_Durso on Instagram and TikTok for pre and post game reels. That also certainly helps us. And again, so the Flyers with a somewhat busy week coming up, only 3 games, a nice break in the middle of some of that, but more to come as the month goes on and more to come to see if the Flyers continue to kind of hold on to one of those playoff spots for however long as we continue to work our way towards hitting milestones and things like that. So once again, thank you for joining me on another episode of Flyers Files. And again, don't forget about the other shows that are part of BFA Live Sports. The Trust the Mikes podcast with Mike Gill and MKB talking Sixers basketball. Now batting for the Phillies with Mike and Bob Wankel doing all sorts of Phillies talk as the offseason heats up. Earnshaw Radio with Nikki Earnshaw giving you 4-for-4 coverage throughout the course of the show. All of that, follow along. Don't forget about this show as well and be a part of what Flyers Files is and get caught up on the Flyers week in, week out as we discuss it every single week going forward through the course of the season, however long it takes to get through the end of the season. So once again, thank you for tuning in with me tonight and joining me. And we'll be back again, like I said, next week. Special time. We're going live at 7:30 next Wednesday to talk more Flyers hockey. Until then, I'm Kevin Durso. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.